delighted we are to have you, and to remind our audience that they probably remember you with us when you first came by dealing with President Obama and the economic development.
Yes.
And I'm sure that you can tell us, after you give us some information in reference to your background, education, and et cetera, how things have changed since you were first with us. And that's what we want to talk about today, a sort of a review and a preview of some of the things that have happened. Let's start off by talking about your background, and then we'll get into additional information.
Okay, Dr. Haney, thank you very much for inviting me. Though it has been a long time since I came back here, and this was before President Obama got elected. Mm-hmm. At that time, we were talking about as a candidate, and we were hoping and praying too that he would get elected. And ever since that time, as I predicted, and he has done a fantastic job in getting us out of this rut which the Bush administration has caused us. And every day, hundreds of thousands of workers, they were losing jobs left and right. And the first thing President Obama had done was first arrested that workforce downfall. That's one of the major things which he has done. A number of people still talk about, oh, well, he has 4 years and still the unemployment rate is still around 8%. But that's not true. You know, as a matter of fact, if it is not for President Obama's policies, economic policies, and they were very aggressive, what we call in economics, Keynesian economics, wherever the private enterprise system fails, it is the responsibility of the government, and President Obama took care of that by stopping that, increasing unemployment day by day, plus he was able to create nearly 2.4 million new jobs during the first term. Now, here again, some of you might say, well, why is it still the unemployment rate is so high? If it is not for his economic policies, we would have seen another greatest depression we have had in 1930s, where officially there was an unemployment rate of 25%. Unofficially, it was nearly 50%. That means every other person was really unemployed during the Great Depression. Now, it reminded of that period when the election time and then Bush administration, how they have messed up our economy. So here, ever since he took over office, he has improved the economy tremendously. And today, as of last month data, it was 7.5% of unemployment. Still, it is very high. But don't forget, the number of workers who were laid off, they did not even want to try for a new job during the Bush administration. So after President Obama took over office, the economic policies have given enough incentive for the businessmen to start hiring again. So those people who were not looking for a job because there was no hope, they're all back into the labor force. So because of that, the unemployment rate is still high, but at the same token, you must remember that nearly 2.4 million new jobs were created during the Obama administration. And it is improving still a lot faster.
Very good. And I think, Dr. MParuchuri, we're getting ready for the first commercial break, but essentially that's what we're talking about, looking back over that period in which there was very little hope as far as a large number of folks were concerned of any kind of improvement at all.
Right.
That even in spite of the opposition that the president has faced, and some of the major things I think you're going to talk about later has to do with infrastructure and et cetera and et cetera. It's difficult to do infrastructure by himself.
Right.
See, and of course we're going to talk about that, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
Thank you.
talking to Dr. MParuchuri from Tennessee State University, and he's given us some information relative to the economic development of the country during President Obama's administration and now his second administration. And Dr. Paruchuri, I think that most of us will admit that one of the most important developments during President Obama's administration has been health care. And let's talk about where we were in terms of health care before he became president and where we are moving toward, even though the Affordable Care Act did not go into full effect yet.
Yes. Before Obama took office, became the president, we have 44 million people without any health care. They are not insurable according to the insurance companies. Either they were sick, past record makes them ineligible to be a client for these insurance companies. And these insurance companies see a lot of risk in insuring them. That's why they use all sorts of excuses not to insure number of people. That's one of the major things which the so-called Health Reform Act, which was introduced by our president, it's unbelievably very successful, and it's going to cover these 45 million people. If they do not have enough income, it is the responsibility of the government to pay the premium. If you can afford, you are expected to pay. So here, this Obamacare, as we all call it now, it was passed in May 23rd of year 2010. There was enormous amount of opposition from the Republicans, but he passed over every objection, and sometimes he had to give up some of the things while he's negotiating with the Republicans, and some of the conservative Democrats too. So he was able, as you all know, he's the most skillful negotiator we have ever had. And the other person, probably other president we can think of is either John F. Kennedy or Lyndon B. Johnson. But among these, they all tried in the past to have this kind of legislation. They could not get anywhere near to get this because of the opposition, especially from the lobbying by the insurance companies and banks and the others, the other reforms which have been implemented now under the Obama administration. So under this new Healthcare Reform Act, which is also known as Obamacare, we have nearly those 44 million people I was talking about who are not having any health care. They are all covered. They are all covered because of this only. Number of states, especially the Republican governors ruled states, have sued him in Supreme Court. And Supreme Court ruled in favor of the president. So this has become officially a law on that time in May. So ever since that time, even the poorest person in this country, they do not have to worry about their health care. And even though some of us may have to pay a little bit more in terms of the premium when we buy these insurances, it is nice to know that we're not going to be dropped off from the insurance. As some of the insurance companies have done in the past, if you are sick, they'll try to find some excuse and drop you from the insurance. Now, it is illegal for them to drop anybody. So that itself is a major boon for all of us. Whether we are rich or poor or middle income group people, it does not make any difference. Every one of us get the benefit. Even though The upper income group people may be paying a little bit more in terms of insurance premium. But otherwise, average person do not have to pay exorbitant amounts. But one thing is everybody is insured. That is one of the best thing which every president for the past 50 plus years have tried very hard, even to get the minimum guaranteed, but they were not successful. And thank heavens it is a law now, so nobody has to worry about it.
And the Supreme Court has already declared it to be constitutional, but yet the opposition to such a plan will meet almost annually in Congress and decide to try to repeal it. I mean, does that make any sense? I mean, how do you explain that?
No, it's not that easy. Since it is a law, to repeal the law, it takes a lot more majorities in Congress, and plus,
and so they realize that they really cannot repeal this law, but they do. Well, what about infrastructure developments, Dr. Paruchuri? Because I understand that this is one of the major ways that
to
the
increase
economy
the employment. Yes. As a matter of fact, if you go anywhere in the country, including Nashville, you see nothing but highway construction here and there, and number of roads are being blocked for the repairs and all that. That means what? Hundreds of thousands of new jobs in construction. That would mean more smoother roads where you do not have to hit these potholes. And that is one of the major things which has helped improving our infrastructure. And the government is also providing a lot of help for the information technology industry by providing them a lot of grants to do a lot of new research, and including the government. Government has been also using a lot of this IT technology.
Very good. Of course, Dr. Paruchuri, we're getting ready for our second break, and after which time we'll have about 10 minutes. And when we come back, what we'd like for you to do is to continue this discussion in terms of economic development, but also to sort of point us in some direction as to what are some of the possibilities that the president might have in terms of trying to overcome some of the opposition that he has in reference to infrastructure and that kind of thing. Because I think that you've got some information in reference to that. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.